My journey into the world of finance began from a place of profound silence. I am 24 years old, and my investment portfolio currently stands at $419,000. Before you make any assumptions, let me be clear. I was not born into wealth. Growing up as the child of immigrant parents, money was a subject shrouded in a thick fog of taboo and anxiety. It was the silent stressor at the dinner table, the whispered worry behind closed doors. My parents, who are my heroes in every sense of the word, taught me the value of relentless hard work, integrity, and perseverance. Yet the one language they couldn't teach me was the language of money. They knew how to earn it, how to save it with a fierce and protective grip, but the concept of making money work for you, of investing, was an alien one, a lexicon belonging to a world they felt they weren't a part of. Their financial philosophy was forged in the crucible of scarcity and instability, a deep-seated distrust of institutions they didn't understand. For them, wealth was something tangible, something you could hold. It was the crisp stack of bills tucked away safely, a physical bulwark against the uncertainties of life. The stock market, with its fluctuating charts and cryptic jargon, was nothing more than a glorified casino, a dangerous game played by the rich and reckless. This fear was not just taught, it was inherited, woven into the very fabric of my understanding of the world. I started my adult life with just a few $100s to my name and a paralyzing fear that any attempt to grow it would result in losing it all. This fear led me down a path paved with mistakes. I made almost every conceivable error, from the small, impulsive trade to the blunder that cost me thousands of dollars. I chased hot stocks based on flimsy rumors. I sold in a panic when the market dipped, and I stood on the sidelines, frozen by indecision, while opportunities passed me by. Yet in retrospect, taking that terrifying leap of faith and stumbling through those early failures was the most profound education I could have ever received. Each mistake was a lesson, each loss a tuition payment for my financial literacy. I'm not here to position myself as a guru or to pretend I have a crystal ball that reveals the market's secrets. I am simply a fellow traveler on this journey, someone who started from a place of ignorance and fear and managed to find a path forward. My goal is to share what I've done, what I've learned, and the fundamental truths that have reshaped my financial destiny, in the hope that it might illuminate a part of your own journey. These are the 5 biggest investing lessons that changed absolutely everything for me. The foundational lesson, the one that had to shatter my inherited financial worldview, was this. While you may lose some money by investing, you are absolutely, unequivocally guaranteed to lose money if you don't. For years, I watched my family pour their sweat and sacrifice into earning a living, only to then neutralize that effort by stashing their savings in cash, hidden away as if it were a treasure. They believed this was the pinnacle of safety, a fortress of financial security. But what they couldn't see, what the financial world had never taught them, was that their fortress was made of ice, and a silent, invisible fire called inflation was relentlessly melting it away. I carried that same fear into my early 20s. The stock market felt like a phantom, an unpredictable beast that could devour a lifetime of savings in an instant. My own relatives would see news reports about market volatility and say, "See, that's how people go broke." But a chilling realization began to dawn on me as I watched their own lives unfold. They were going broke anyway, just in slow motion. The cash they had so diligently saved year after year was steadily losing its power. Every trip to the grocery store, every visit to the gas station, cost a little more. The same amount of money bought them less comfort, less security, less everything. This invisible thief is inflation, the persistent increase in the cost of goods and services over time. While it may seem like a distant, academic concept, its effects are deeply personal. Here in the United States, the historical average for inflation hovers around 3%, but as we've seen in recent years, it can surge dramatically, acting like a tax on anyone holding cash. Let's dissect what that seemingly small number actually does. If your money is sitting in a standard checking or savings account, likely earning a paltry 0.01% in interest, while inflation is running at 3%, you are losing 2.99% of your purchasing power every single year. It's not just that you aren't getting ahead, you are actively falling behind. You are trying to fill a bucket with a gaping hole in the bottom. This isn't saving, it's a voluntary, slow-motion surrender to financial decline. The long-term mathematics of this erosion are brutal, and it's a reality most people prefer not to confront. A consistent 2.8% inflation rate, for example, will slash the real value of your money in half in approximately 25 years. Think about that for a moment. If you save $100,000 in cash at age 40 for your retirement at 65, that money will only have the purchasing power of $50,000 by the time you need it. The nest egg you so carefully built is suddenly half its size. Let's make it more immediate. That $1,000 you have saved today in just 10 years will only buy what about $758 buys right now. I learned this firsthand when I looked at my own emergency fund. The amount I had set aside 3 years ago, which I believed was sufficient to cover 6 months of expenses, could barely cover 4 months of the same expenses today. My safe money had failed me. That's when it truly clicked. Playing it safe was playing myself. Let's rewind the clock a decade and think about something as simple as a McDonald's quarter-pounder meal. Around 2015, that meal, a burger, medium fries, and a soda, would have set you back about $5.39. Today, that identical meal costs closer to $11.99 before taxes. That's a staggering 122% increase. The ingredients haven't fundamentally changed, but the value of the dollar you use to buy them has plummeted. This isn't just about fast food. It's about everything. The cost of used cars, rent for an apartment, a gallon of milk, a college education, a hospital visit, all are on a near-permanent upward trajectory. The force of inflation is relentless. It may slow, but it never truly reverses. It is working against you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with no days off. This is why your money cannot afford to be idle. It must be actively working for you, growing at a rate that outpaces the speed at which its value is eroding. This is the fundamental role of investing. When you invest, you are not just hoping for a gain. You are deploying your money into the economy, allowing it to participate in the growth of businesses and the creation of value. Unlike the cash in your bank account, which is passively losing its purchasing power, invested money is on the offense, actively fighting to increase its own value. Consider a simple, tangible example. Let's say in 2015 you had taken $100, and instead of putting it in the bank, you bought a share of an S&P 500 index fund, which represents the 500 largest companies in the U.S. by today. That initial $100 investment would have grown significantly, likely to over $300. That growth didn't just edge out the 3% annual inflation, it absolutely crushed it, multiplying your money's power in the process. This realization was my financial awakening. I finally understood that in the modern economy, the riskiest thing you can do with your money is nothing at all. If you are not investing, you are, by default, choosing to go broke slowly. Even after I intellectually understood the corrosive power of inflation, a formidable psychological barrier remained. The idea of investing still felt like it was reserved for an exclusive club of which I was not a member. I was broke, with only a few $100s to my name. The world of finance, with its complex terminology and intimidating platforms, felt like a foreign language. Growing up in a household where money was a source of stress and seen as a root of all evil, I had no foundation in financial literacy. We never discussed building wealth. We only discussed surviving until the next paycheck. So when the topic of investing came up, my internal monologue was relentlessly dismissive. What's the point? I would think. An 8% annual return on my $100 is a measly $8. That's barely enough to buy lunch. It won't make any real difference. I was stuck in a paralysis of perceived insignificance. But it turns out my entire perspective was inverted. Investing isn't a luxury for the wealthy. It is the most reliable, time-tested mechanism for becoming wealthy. And paradoxically, the best time to start is when you are broke. My meager beginnings, which I once viewed as my greatest handicap, were in reality my greatest advantage. Starting small, when I had very little to lose, was the best thing that could have ever happened to me for 3 crucial reasons. First, starting small allowed me to learn through failure without catastrophic consequences. My very first investment was a masterclass in what not to do. I threw my entire investable net worth at the time, a grand total of $100, into a volatile cannabis stock. I had done minimal research, swayed by hype and the intoxicating dream of a quick fortune. I was convinced I had found my golden ticket. Instead, the stock plummeted by over 99% and I lost everything. I was devastated. But here's the critical point. Because I started when I was broke, the total cost of this invaluable lesson was only $100. Of course, at that moment, it felt like I had lost $1 million. But looking back, it was the best $100 I have ever spent. It taught me about risk, diversification, and the dangers of speculation far more effectively than any book ever could. Now, imagine if I had waited until I had real money to invest. What if I had made that same rookie mistake with $10,000 or $50,000? The financial and emotional damage would have been exponentially greater, perhaps even scaring me away from the market forever. Starting small meant my education was dirt cheap. Second, the desire to invest forced me to revolutionize my entire financial life. When you only have a couple of $100s to your name, you don't have the luxury of being careless with your spending. The need to find money to invest transformed me into a financial surgeon, meticulously dissecting my budget. I started tracking every single dollar. I identified and eliminated my super spending habits, like the daily DoorDash orders that were quietly draining my bank account. I became a relentless researcher, hunting for ways to save money, cut costs, and most importantly, increase my income. This pressure to find capital to invest was the direct catalyst for starting a series of side hustles. Those small ventures, born out of necessity, eventually blossomed into the six-figure business that now fuels my investment portfolio. If I had passively waited until I felt ready or until I had enough money, I would still be waiting on the sidelines today. The constraints of being broke forced a level of discipline and creativity that I would not have otherwise developed. Finally, starting early, even with small amounts, gave me an enormous head start by harnessing the most powerful force in finance: compound interest. People often get discouraged by small beginnings, but they fail to grasp that the amount of time your money is invested is far more important than the amount you initially invest. While my friends were waiting for the perfect moment or a big salary to start investing, I was already in the trenches, 50 mistakes deep but consistently contributing to my portfolio. Those small, early investments were like planting seeds. While they didn't look like much at first, they were quietly taking root, ready to grow exponentially over time. Being broke wasn't my weakness. It was the secret weapon that killed every excuse and forced me to start now. Because I began this journey so early, I stumbled upon a concept that completely redefined my long-term goals: the possibility of early retirement. Like most people, I had been conditioned to believe that retirement was a destination you arrived at around age 65, a magic number when the government and your employer officially grant you permission to stop working. It seemed less like a financial state and more like a predetermined stage of life. The truth, I discovered, is that retirement has nothing to do with your age. It is purely about a number. Specifically, it's the point at which your invested assets can generate enough passive income to cover your lifestyle expenses indefinitely without you ever having to work again. The earlier you reach that number, the sooner you are financially free. The core principle is simple. When your money earns more for you while you are sleeping, vacationing, or doing absolutely nothing than you spend to live your life, you have won the game. Congratulations, you are financially free. The most common framework for calculating this number is known as the 4% rule. Born from a landmark study called the Trinity Study, the rule suggests that you can safely withdraw 4% of your investment portfolio's value in your first year of retirement, and then adjust that amount for inflation each subsequent year, with a very high probability of your money lasting for at least 30 years. To flip this around, you can determine your financial independence number by multiplying your desired annual expenses by 25. Now I know that for someone just starting out, a number like $3 million can seem so astronomically large that it feels completely unattainable. When I first did that calculation, it felt like a fantasy. But the key is to understand that it is not a mountain you have to climb in a single day. It is a long-term destination that you work towards methodically, one step at a time, one investment at a time. Here's a snapshot of where I am today on that journey. I currently have around $400,000 invested, and I am consistently adding between $5,000 and $7,000 to my portfolio every single month. By plugging these numbers into a compound interest calculator and assuming a conservative average annual return, the projection shows that I am on track to hit my $3 million target in my early 40s. This means I have the potential to retire years, even decades, before my parents' generation ever could. The knowledge that I am not chained to a desk until I am 65 is the single most powerful motivator I have. It transforms investing from a chore into an act of liberation. Knowing the math and the mechanics of investing is the easy part. I understood the basics. Think long-term, buy and hold a diversified portfolio, don't panic sell. Yet I cannot count the number of times I watched my portfolio value drop after some piece of negative economic news and felt that primal, gut-wrenching urge to sell everything and run for the hills. It is incredibly difficult to watch the money you worked so hard for seemingly evaporate overnight. It's even harder in some ways to consistently put that money into investments in the first place. There's a constant battle against the desire for instant gratification. It's emotionally taxing to watch thousands of dollars leave your checking account for some abstract future benefit when you could use that same money right now for a dream vacation, a new car, or simply the comfort of seeing a large balance in your bank account. This is when I learned the most crucial lesson of all. Investing success has far less to do with what you know and far more to do with how you behave. It is a game played on the field of your own mind. The psychology of investing is everything. The constant barrage of financial news, the fear of missing out, FOMO, when you see others getting rich quick, and the herd mentality of a panicking market all conspire to derail your best intentions. You see headlines screaming about an impending market crash, or your friend tells you about a meme coin that rocketed up 500% in a week, and suddenly all your carefully laid long-term plans and logical reasoning fly out the window. Your primitive monkey brain takes over, driven by the powerful emotions of fear and greed. Even before you face the drama of the market, you must first win the mental battle of saving versus spending. Our entire consumer culture is engineered to make this difficult. Corporations spend trillions of dollars on sophisticated marketing campaigns with one goal: to convince you to buy their product today. Your brain is constantly being told, "Buy this, you deserve it. Subscribe to that, it will make you happy." Staying disciplined in the face of this relentless psychological pressure is easier said than done. It's hard to stay the course when the market is volatile, and it's equally hard to keep investing when you see your peers buying new things and going on expensive trips. Once I truly understood that my own emotions were my single greatest enemy at every stage of the process, I had to ask myself a critical question. What can I do to make this easier? How can I build a system that takes my flawed, emotional self out of the equation as much as possible? The answer to combating my emotional decision-making was to simplify my strategy and automate my actions. I realized that investing did not need to be the complex, time-consuming, and stressful activity I was making it out to be. My solution was to build a system that runs quietly in the background of my life, a financial engine that operates without my constant interference. For the first several years of my journey, and still to this day, the cornerstone of my portfolio has been low-cost index funds and ETFs, exchange-traded funds. Specifically, I invested heavily in funds like VOO, which is Vanguard's S&P 500 ETF. This single investment gives me ownership in the 500 largest and most successful companies in the U.S. I chose this path because I didn't want the impossible task of trying to outsmart the market by picking individual stocks or timing my entries and exits. The evidence is overwhelming that even the vast majority of professional fund managers fail to beat the market average over the long run. I decided to accept that I was not the exception. By buying the entire market, I could guarantee I would capture the market's average return over time, which has historically been a powerful engine for wealth creation. The second and equally important part of my system was automation. I set up an automatic transfer and investment for every single week. As soon as money from my paycheck or business income hits my bank account, a predetermined portion is automatically withdrawn and invested into my portfolio. It happens whether the market is up or down, whether I feel optimistic or fearful. I don't have to press a button. I don't have to lift a finger. It just happens. This strategy, known as dollar cost averaging, is my defense against emotional trading. It forced me to stay consistent even when the world felt like it was falling apart during the pandemic, wars, recession scares, and other geopolitical dramas. It also created a powerful psychological shift. By treating my investment as a non-negotiable bill, like a mortgage or a car payment, it forced me to structure the rest of my budget around it. The money was coming out of my account no matter what, so I had to rise to the occasion and ensure my finances could support that goal. This simple system of simplification and automation took the emotion, the guesswork, and the stress out of building wealth, allowing me to focus on what truly matters: consistency and time. I was never taught any of this growing up. I had to learn these lessons through trial, error, and painful experience. The mission of my journey now is to be the mentor that I wish I had, to share the mistakes and the lessons I've learned along the way. If you have lessons of your own that have shaped your financial life, I encourage you to share them. In this complex world, we can all learn from each other. Until next time.